leader.
Very prescient.
He said a year ago he believed there was a crisis in health care, and he's co-sponsored a bill for universal mandated care. Now, of course, he says there's no crisis, and he rejects that very same bill. Isn't it clear that the Republican strategy these days is principles be damned, give President Clinton a black eye at any cost?
I think, Michael, what's very clear is Republicans have had the same position on health care since last summer. We have been for specific reforms that solve the problems facing the health care system. We have always opposed turning the health care system over to the government. Unfortunately, the Clintons and the Democratic leadership in the House have pushed their government-run health care system. They want the government to take over health care with spending limits, price controls, mandatory alliances, all this. We can't accept that because it'll hurt the quality of care. It'll reduce choices for consumers, cost jobs, raise taxes, increase the deficit. We want good health care reform, but we're not going to take bad health care reform.
Well, that's your soundbite, but are you actually saying that Bob Dole has not changed his position in the past year? Are you saying that with a straight face?
Well, what I'm actually saying is that Republicans offered specific reforms a year ago, and the Democrats said, no, that's crazy, we don't want that, it's unacceptable.
No, no, no.
Well, they did.
This was a bill proposed by Senator John Chafee, a moderate Republican. It had a tax increase in it. It had mandated requirements for everything, some of the very things you now reject. Bob Dole was a co-sponsor. Now, why did he change his mind?
Well, first of all, it did not have an employer mandate. It did not impose a huge payroll tax. It had an individual mandate. The Democrats and their labor union allies went out and ran TV advertising against it, said that's totally unacceptable.
Well, that's why the Democrats are against it. Why is Bob Dole against it when he supported it a year ago?
Michael Kinsley is, whining a bit because Bob Dole stopped health care. Look, you guys control both houses of Congress. It's your #1 priority. You had 75% support. Tonight's poll, Vic, shows that 60% of the American people don't think Bill Clinton's a good leader on health care. Who blew it for you guys?
You know who blew it? There was about $100 million of special interest money that went on the tube and totally confused the American people about what it is we were trying to do here. This is a bill that Richard Nixon put in when he was president. You remember, you were involved.
Right.
This is the kind of...
How was that? If the special interest money confused the American people, who confused you guys so that you couldn't pass the president's top priority?
Let me tell you, there's no confusion. There is no confusion about what we want to accomplish. This issue isn't dead.
Why don't you?
This issue will be before the American people for the next 2 years. It will be there until we resolve it, because we've done a great deal of education on the subject this year. But when you take the amount of money that was spent, which is twice, by the way, what a presidential candidate can spend in his campaign, you can do an awful lot of damage to the body politic.
But why are you bracing for a political disaster this fall, if you haven't failed?
We're not bracing for a political disaster. Democrats are out running for Congress the way they traditionally have. You know, Tip O'Neill, my mentor, said, all politics is local. It's always been that way. These guys have had their silver bullet, their top-down national strategy. It hasn't worked yet, and I don't think it's going to work this time.
Pat, let me just say about health care. Congressman Fazio was an original co-sponsor of the Clintons' health care plan. Right. And the truth is, the more the American people found out about the Clintons' government-run health care system, the less they liked it.
Now,
that's what's happened here.
It's just a fact of it was not a government-run plan, and you still haven't explained why Bob Dole changed his mind on his health care plan.
Michael, you say it's not a government plan. The government, a government board, was going to set the limits on all spending, public or private. Of course they were.
Incorrect.
They were going to set global budgets, spending limits on everything.
Now,
if that's not controlling the health care system,
the Canadian plan. This wasn't the British plan. This was a uniquely American plan. It used the system that's already in place that covers 9 out of 10 Americans today. Health care where you work.
Now, what it is the government taking over the health care system to set how much money can be spent.
In fact, we didn't choose a regulatory approach. We chose a competitive model.
You don't deny that the government set the total amount to be spent.
We can't settle that now, Vic, but what we can settle is, look, you did have both houses of Congress strongly in your favor. You had the president very popular. He gave a speech that everybody agreed was a great speech on health care. You've had 16, 18 months to get it through. You're going to fail. Now, you can't keep blaming these fellas when we're in the minority.
If you don't have 60 votes, you can't move in the Senate to start with. We all understand how the filibuster has been used to frustrate on every occasion when real change is in the offing. If you think people are unhappy with Washington gridlock, look at the last CNN poll where their unhappiness with Republican leadership in Congress was almost twice what it was with the president.
We got a big
They have been the obstructionists, and now you see the results.
Vic, we got a big poll. We got a big poll coming 8 weeks from now. And you guys are estimated to lose 30 of your best friends.
Listen, Pat, we all understand that off-year elections are going to cost seats. On average, 26 seats. I think we'll beat that. I think we'll come in far below that, and I think you will see that this was seen as our low point, because I think we're going to continue to build support. When people understand the 4 million jobs you mentioned, when they understand the progress we've made, this isn't a crime bill from top down. This was to help local law enforcement have the tools to do the job. And when people understand it, and I think they will before Election Day, all the euphoria that you guys are already preliminarily celebrating will go out the window.
Haley, be honest about something, if you can. If George Bush had been reelected and 4 million jobs have been created in the past 2 years, wouldn't Haley Barbour, the chairman of the Republican Party, be touting that as a fantastic presidential accomplishment?
Well, let's face it, Michael, 4 million jobs have been created because of the economy that Bill Clinton inherited from George Bush. If you think $260 billion, if you think the Clinton tax bill, the largest tax increase in American history, created jobs, just thank goodness Bill Clinton inherited an economy that was growing strongly enough.
I don't recall Republicans saying back in 1992, now in the next 2 years, if you vote for Bill Clinton,
Michael,
4 million jobs will be added.
You don't
Don't worry about a thing. You can vote for Bill Clinton and 4 million more jobs will be added. I don't remember you Republicans saying that.
Well, Michael, the reason you don't remember that is because you were too busy saying the economy had gone to hell in a handbasket and how terrible things were, and when it turned out the economy had grown faster the last 6 months of the Bush administration than any 6 months of the Clinton administration, you conveniently forgot it.
Year and a half of this administration than we had in all 4 years of the Bush administration. We did this by bringing deficits down in real terms. 3 years running, we've had deficits coming down. We haven't had that since Harry Truman was in office and let the buck stop with him.
I had some criticism
Lots of rhetoric,
myself.
nothing done.
I had some criticism myself of the Bush administration.
I noticed.
Now, let me ask you something.
I think you better read Barbara's book. It might not be easy on you.
Well, it's written in retirement. Let me ask you, Vic, what vital interest of the United States is involved in Haiti that's worth spending the life of a single Marine?
I think the president will be coming to the American people. I think he will be outlining what he believes to be in America's interest. I think he will be consulting with Congress. You know, we have this traditional difference between the legislative and executive branch. All those executives you served have chosen to come to Congress when they chose to and not when Congress asked them to.
You criticized undeclared wars, I think rightly so. You criticized intervention in Latin America where there's no vital U.S. interest. Why don't you stand up for your principles, tell the president, come to Congress and get authorization, or don't invade?
I expect the president to come to the American people and to explain to the Congress what is in the national interest here. And I might say, going to Somalia, despite the hunger and devastation that occurred there, which George Bush led us into, was a different thing than dealing with a country that's off our coast, impacting the state of Florida with a deluge of refugees.
Haley,
this is something that the president may want to talk to the American people about.
Republicans are now saying, and I happen to think you're correct about this, that under the Constitution, the president must come to Congress if he's going to invade another country. I think it's quite clear. I wish President Clinton would do that. But why weren't you saying that when Republicans were president?
Well, what emergency is there here? Now, Vic Fazio voted that the President of the United States had to come. He voted for a resolution that said in the Gulf War that the President of the United States had to, not should, had to come to Congress before the invasion. Now, when you look at Nicaragua, I mean, when you look at Panama or Grenada, those were not things that for 6 months or a year. This idea that the Democrats have today, they've been talking about invading Haiti for 6 months or a year. There is no national interest in Haiti. There is no national security interest in Haiti.
Try to use the combined power of both parties to get Cedras to leave. Why are we dividing and fighting over something in advance? Why don't we concentrate on diplomatic and economic pressure to get rid of Cedras so we don't have to talk about an invasion?
The Republicans have supported.
Why don't we have this end at the water's edge?
Well, that's what we're trying to do, is to keep from getting to the water's edge.
Republicans have not supported the economic sanctions against Haiti. Some of them have, but most of them have not.
Well, of course we have. But, Michael, here's the point. Here's the point. What national security interest does the United States have in Haiti?
Well, let me ask.
What public policy interest? What excuse at all is there for What excuse at all is there for invading
on Grenada? I woke up one morning and we suddenly taken an island most Americans had never heard of.
That the Soviet Union had built an Air Force base
Oh,
zone, that American
really
citizens
petrified
on
by Grenada.
were threatened and were under incarceration at the time. So what do we do to Haiti? I mean, you guys are starving these people out of Haiti.
Let's get Vic back in here. Vic.
Hi.
Look, there is no doubt that American foreign policy credibility was sky high under Ronald Reagan and sky high under George Bush after Desert Storm. Why is it that the Secretary of State had to say yesterday, we may have to go into Haiti to maintain the credibility of the American president? How did he lose it and where?
I think you understand because you've been watching Republican presidents struggle with the post-bipolar world. We're in a very different environment now. You know, the last president talked a lot about it, but we have had to live with a complex situation that isn't easily resolved by where the Russians are and where the Americans are.
Vic, I agree with you, but how did the president lose that tremendous credibility America had at the end of the Cold War?
Struggling, sometimes successfully, as in Russia and in Eastern Europe and in Cuba, sometimes without as much success in Bosnia, to find ways to solve problems in this very complex world that isn't as easily resolved as it was where we knew where the Reds were and where we were. This is a very complex world.
Nicaragua, for example.
We have this little tradition under capitalism called commercials. You've probably heard of them, Haley Barber. We're going to have one of those now. And when we come back, it's the chance for the members of our own audience to play Pat and Mike and ask questions of our guests. We'll be back.
What's happening?
Welcome back to Crossfire. We're coming to you live from the Betts Theater at the George Washington University here in D.C. And we're about to turn over the questioning duties to some members of the audience. Our guests tonight, Haley Barber, Chairman of the Republican National Committee, and Vic Fazio, Democratic Congressman from California and Chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. We're going to take questions from the audience now. The rules are these. They've got to be addressed to the guests, not the host, and they've got to be about the topic of the day. See how you can do. Let's start with Bruce of New York.
Yes, my question for Chairman Barber is this. Since the party of the president always loses in the midterm elections, don't you guys have to win big in order to avoid looking like failures yourselves?
Well, the average, contrary to what Vic said, the average gain for the party out of power after a new president is elected is 13. I think we will exceed that. I think Vic is closer to what is right. We'll have the most Republicans in Congress since 1958 after these elections. But look, let me make this plain. This environment's the best for Republicans I've ever seen. Our opportunities are the greatest I've ever seen, but the election's not today. The election is 2 months from now, and we're very, very cognizant of that.
All right, Bill from D.C. for Vic Fazio.
Congressman Fazio, in an effort to discredit conservative in the upcoming fall elections, you've been leading the charge against the so-called religious right on behalf of your Democratic colleagues. Now, with your own president espousing traditional family values last week in New Orleans, aren't you trying to have your cake and eat it too?
No, I guess I'm opposed to people like Jerry Falwell, who are using his religious broadcast to defame the President of the United States, who's being blamed for killing his best friend. I'm frankly troubled by an organization like Pat Robertson's, which uses Christian in its title as it pursues its partisan secular goals under the rubric of Christianity. I know there are people all across the spectrum who are people of faith, who are involved in parties.
What did you think?
And I think that's fine.
What did you think, Haley, of Jerry Falwell about peddling this tape that says that President Clinton killed his political opponents in Arkansas? Do you approve of that?
I wouldn't do it, but let me just say this. Here's Vic Fazio, who led this Christian bashing campaign, yet last month the President of the United States goes down to a church here in Washington and says, it's God's will that we pass the crime bill.
Haley, I'm not
if I said that, they would hang me out by the roof.
I'm not
I wonder if God wanted midnight basketball in it or out of it.
You know what? You guys say we're bashing Christians. When Christians like Falwell and Robertson become blatantly political, they're in the arena with the rest of us. Let's get that straight.
Look, when Bill Clinton is
Let me be very clear. Your problem is the Christians in Minnesota, the takeover in Idaho and Oregon, Ollie North here in Virginia. Your problem is you're being taken over.
About your next senator from Virginia.
You're being taken over by the right wing.
What you've got here,
religious component
very
here.
plainly, is the Democratic Party has a very plain, transparent political ploy that they think it's in their best interest to go out and bash Christians. And I like that. Keep it up.
You just keep mischaracterizing what we're saying for your fun and profit.
No, it's my turn. It's Regina from San Francisco. Yes. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Isn't it true that even with attempts to cover it up, the radical right of the Republican Party is taking over such elections in Texas?
Is doing what now?
Radical right is taking over elections such as in Texas, Virginia, and Minnesota?
You know, it's very interesting that you would ask that. I think one of the great successes of the Republican Party since I've been chairman is that you have seen pro-life Republicans support pro-choice Republicans like Christy Whitman, Rudy Giuliani, Dick Reardon, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, Paul Coverdale, even when they defeated other pro-life Republicans in primaries. And you've seen pro-choice Republicans support pro-life Republicans. I mean, what's important in our party is that we understand that somebody that agrees with you 80% of the time is your friend and ally. They're not some 20%.
The bottom line here is it's a partisan agenda. You understand that. They're going to support Republicans regardless of where they come from on the spectrum.
I can't believe
these guys on the radical right have this party under its thumb, and it's going to be the end of it in 1996.
You know, it really does my heart good to see you bleed these tears for the Republican Party. Give me a break. Everybody sees
you know why
through
I'm
that.
kind of encouraged? I'm
Vic
encouraged.
Fazio talking about partisanship is like Madonna talking about virginity. Come on up there. Let's go, Ron from D.C. Ron from D.C., go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Fazio, does anybody in this town, you or any of your 535 colleagues, have any idea what the health care plan is going to cost?
What is going to cost?
Any idea what the health care plan is going to cost?
The health care plan is going to cost. We probably had better estimates from CBO than anybody has ever had on any major public policy issue. And with some minor tax increase like the tobacco tax and reductions in other health care spending, I think we would have made sure that there was a net gain to the Treasury or a neutral impact. That isn't the question. The question was whether we were going to cover all Americans or not, whether we're going to get everybody participating in the healthcare system. We can tinker with the insurance side of things, but as in New York, everybody's rates go up unless we get universal coverage.
Here's a test. Scott of Fairfax, can you ask a 15-second question of Haley Barbour?
1992 was a referendum on health care, and the American people elected Bill Clinton to do something. 30 million people don't have health care. Tens of millions more, like my late mother, worry about losing their houses. Why are you Republicans more concerned about bashing Clinton than standing up for the American people?
No, the truth is, the only reason just so you could be confused with the facts, the only reason no health care bill was passed in 1992, the bill that was sponsored by Senator Benson that passed the United States Senate, the reason it didn't pass in 1992 is because the Democratic leadership of the House of Representatives refused to let it come to a vote just because it would have passed and they would have lost the political issue. Those are the facts.
Haley ran out the clock. You can't correct his errors. Thanks a lot, Haley Barbour. Thank you, Vic Fazio. Thanks to the audience. Pat and I will be back with a little yip-yap, as we call it, in just a few minutes.
A little different with a live audience, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah.
But I thought it was fairly evenly balanced.
Fairly evenly
between the two.
Just like our show every night, right?
Well, we make an effort. I think Vic Fazio is putting a good face on things. You guys are really looking at a disaster. Just, you know, I'm sorry about that.
I'm not going to argue with you on the facts. It looks very...
Why?
I'll tell you why. It's in part because of some mistakes, of course, for the Clinton administration. In hindsight, you can always point to things. It's mainly, I would say, the viciously partisan Republican opposition, which is willing to lie, cheat, and steal, change its story, and nothing like it. I thought, I mean...
Lie, cheat, and steal. That's what Ronald Reagan said about the evil empire, Michael. You're not accusing Republicans of being that bad, are you?
I'm accusing them of being a lot more viciously partisan than the Democrats ever were in the early 1980s under Ronald Reagan.
Tell me all about it, Michael. I worked for Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan.
Well, Richard Nixon's a different case, I think.
A little taste of what you guys dished out. You don't like it, and I don't think you can take it.
Well...
Why don't you say goodnight?
Richard Nixon, I might agree with you. Ronald Reagan, I deny it. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
On the right, Pat Buchanan. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire Live from George Washington University.